Oh, Teresa. Oh, that's right. Do you know much at all about the early settlements when the Pilgrims came down? Do you know anything about Pocahontas? You've heard of her. You know who she is.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. That's what I needed to hear. Okay. First off, we got this one is about Pocahontas.
They're right here.
Oh, no.
Okay, and this one is about the early settlers. Okay, and it's got some different parts and things. I read both of these last night, so they're easy to read. Okay, so that will help you get my shirts. So I got you those. And I got the okay, this you can wipe it off and everything. Okay, this one is about the presidents of the United States, going all the way back to the very first one, George Washington. And that tells you where they're from and the dates of the okay. All the way down to the guy we got now. All the presidents we've had. See, he was from Indiana, and he was 1889 to 1893. So that gives you all that information on there. And then this one is the first states, which means they're wives. Okay, so Martha Washington and George Washington, and it gives you the dates. That's now. She's the one that's in there now. Yes. So you got that, and then I got here also. This one here is really pretty cool. These are flags. These are the 13 original states in order of statehood in the United States. So Delaware was first, second, third, fourth, to Rhode Island, and then became a state in 1790. It gives you the date, gives you all this other information on here like this. Then on this side is a map of what it used to be like when they first came and settled. They settled in Jamestown, which is right in this area. It's real hard to see. This is the area where they had some. And back then, we had all the states. These are all those territories. So this one is Virginia, what is now Virginia, but Virginia stretched all the way across there. North Carolina. I got one of these. Yeah, but the one book has several activities.
Number 9, little books. Number 9.
So these are for you. Wow. These are for your daughter.
Number 9. Numero 9.
Okay. It's not getting late.
Let's see number 9.
Yeah, I will.
Number 9.
Number 9.
Little book.
Little book. Last verse, number 9. I have found a friend in Jesus. He's everything to me. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. The lily of the valley, in him alone I see. All I need to cleanse and make me fully whole. In sorrow he's my comfort, in trouble he's my stay. He tells me every care on him to roll. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. He will never, never leave me, nor yet forsake me here, while I live by faith into his blessed will. A wall of fire about me, I've nothing now to fear. With his manna he my hungry soul shall fill. Then sweeping up to glory to see his blessed face, when the rivers of delight shall ever roll. He's the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star. He's the fairest of 10,000 to my soul. I thought of a new one. Find the people in this room that have your same favorite condiment. Same favorite condiment. And for anything, condiment.
Mayonnaise, mustard, ketchup.
Yeah.
Ashley's
I think spicy mustard, spicy brown mustard is up here. I think that's my favorite.
Or
Spicy brown mustard. No, I don't like Dijon. Mayonnaise is back. Mayonnaise or Miracle Whip?
Miracle Whip.
Mayonnaise, real mayonnaise. What is? Honey mustard. You got A1, you got horsey sauce, you got, what's it called? Sweet Baby Ray's.
Yeah.
I'm sort of a,
I don't know.
ooh, Chick-fil-A sauce. Forgot about that.
Chick-fil-A has their own sauce.
Chick-fil-A has their own sauce. Oh my gosh. Could like take a bath in it.
Trying to think what it is.
What are you? Frank's hot sauce? Huh? I can't have, I like hot sauce on like all your hot sauce and shrimp and some stuff. But you guys are all honey mustard?
Wow. And Elliot Penny
What are you?
What are you guys?
All right. Back here, Joni, we have Frank's Red Hot Sauce. Here we have the children of the group that all like honey mustard on their chicken nuggets.
You know that you can marinate stuff too?
Really?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
But
awesome.
she puts ketchup on everything.
I know, exactly,
She
yeah.
doesn't count the rest. Can I just make my own group and say it was everything?
All right. All right, back here.
Undecided group.
Okay.
Miracle Whip,
She's
not to
saucy.
be confused with mayonnaise, right? All right, Mom, are you alone? Garlic salt on everything? Okay.
Horseradish.
Horseradish. What do you guys?
We are undecided. It
Undecided?
depends on what we're having.
All right.
I'm barbecue.
See, I think I'm sort of the spicy brown mustard A1 Sweet Baby Ray's section.
These children have a section.
Oh, they do?
Yes.
What do you guys like? Ketchup? All right, you can have a seat. Has everyone seen all the crazy new condiments they're coming out with? The friendship or Frenchaise and French. Anyone have French? It's French and ranch dressing mixed together.
There's ranch that they used to serve that in high school.
Heinz is actually, they make them now. If you go to the condiment section, they've got French and they've got Mayastard and Ketchastard or something like that. I don't know what they call them. I'm surprised there wasn't more Sweet Baby Ray's in here.
He said barbecue.
I know it was one. That's great. I've really,
I got a response from Mr. Boykin.
okay.
We finally have his I finally have his email correct.
Okay.
And he said, "Thank you, brother, for all the teaching and the prayer requests. We will always pray with you together in spirit. God bless you all."
Great. Things on the prayer list this week. Always want to be praying for individual growth and perseverance. Please continue to pray for Sierra through her treatments and her family. Obviously, the efforts in Signani, things going on there. If you can, please keep the Belarus trip in your prayers. My brain is rather fried at this point. Prepping for that. I'm trying to get everything finished up this weekend so I can send things and we continue to organize that stuff. So we leave the 21st, which I think is Tuesday, a week from Tuesday, and then we'll get back the next week on Friday. Somewhere there, so.
Memorial weekend.
Yeah, I'll be gone Memorial weekend.
Airport is busy.
No, yeah, I'm gone during in Memorial weekend, the 26th-ish, 27th. Yeah, I'll be gone that week. So I leave the week come the time before and come back the time after. So, but please pray for safe travel and all that stuff. I was spoiled last time. I had 2 empty seats next to me. So I sent a picture to Jeremy and joked that my backpack had a $900 seat and my hat had its own $900 seat. So, I don't know if I'll get that spoiled this time.
Yeah, that's a luxury.
On an 8-hour flight, yes, it is. Yeah, it was pretty nice. But I still can't sleep. I can't sleep on a flight.
Longest flight ever took 26 hours. You
To
fall
China?
asleep. No.
Or did it?
This is back in service.
Oh,
What, Hawaii?
Maybe the best is the sleep masks.
the mask flight helped. I've never tried those. I just ended up watching movies the whole time. Plus, they have pretty recent movies on there that aren't out yet. It's hard to pass up some free movies. Get your money worth in as many peanuts.
I did that because I wanted to change.
See, I do it going there. Yeah. I do it going there for that reason. Because if I stay all the way up, usually I can get there and the first night I crash and I wake up fine. Coming back is a nightmare because I am not a morning person, but coming back, the first day I'm back, I wake up 4 a.m. wide awake. So for a couple days. All of our brothers throughout the world, all the efforts taking place there. I also want to put up here, please too, to keep in mind Jeff Visco and the coffee shop project that they're doing in Belarus. That is actually opening right after I leave, I think. He'll be over there, in fact, so I'll get the chance to check up on that and see how that's going. But that has been a project. I think that's kind of been in the works for about maybe a year and a half, close to 2 years. Our military, their families, spiritual opportunities in the new week, physical trials, of course, people are facing as we deal with those things. Very thankful for our mothers today on Mother's Day. And if you have opportunities for family and things, want to seize those opportunities, be a great example, a great witness. Other things you mentioned. Yes.
Sierra had treatment Wednesday, so she's really kind of still dragging with it. Also, Morgan met with BNT. Everything happened Wednesday. She had treatment Wednesday. Morgan met with BNT, and she has what they think is an inverted papilloma, which is a tumor in her right maxillary sinus cavity, and it's growing back towards her brain. And I don't know how big your sinus cavities are, but they said it takes up about 70% of that sinus cavity. And so they will do surgery that will be outpatient, but they'll go in through her nose to do all of that.
Okay.
Because she's in a new job, she's wanting to wait until they go on shutdown, so that'll happen until she.
But they're pretty certain that's what's causing the nosebleeds and stuff.
They said that they would know more, that they're giving her some kind of medicine for the next few weeks to try to see if it will shrink it. If this medicine shrinks that tumor, then it's not what the doctor's thinking. It's not this inverted papilloma. But if it doesn't shrink it, then he's fairly certain that that's what it is. But it's he thinks it's benign. Your trip was good. My trip, yeah. Busy days, long days. Yeah, it was good. Ashley and the kids.
I was gonna say, did people tag along and
Yeah,
hang out?
we did.
Your mom hasn't heard anything.
So close.
Yes.
And test that they did on top, it's not covered in heart damage, it's being repaired, whenever congested heart failure spell. Also, they now have a development, so we're ready to have, they, we would love to do that, we have to do that, this body, this one,
So he's more full of it than ever before.
Yeah.
Is that what you're
That's good.
Hey, you know what paybacks are?
saying? Yeah, it's not smart timing when you're about to come up here and do more supplementation. Good deal. Yeah, please continue to pray for Dave and Kay kind of knows. I mean, they kind of finalized her stuff on thinking it was related to her autoimmune, right? I mean, she didn't have additional tests or anything.
She was waiting for scans.
She was still waiting on the result.
She was, okay. That's what I was wondering where she was at. Okay. Announcements why did I feel like midweek this week? No. So midweek this week, on Thursday, Mike Harper will be here next week. He'll do our first and second hour. And then we'll have our fellowship meal, which I don't even know. Do we know who's doing what?
We're doing it, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Following that, I assume that Mike and, I mean, I want to take time to visit fellowship and everything. I assume Mike and Mary Jo will take off after that. It would be nice to have a few-minute VBS meeting, because if we don't do it then, it'll be a while. Is that what I talked about in the last week or two? Get together briefly on the 19th. Should not be very long. Just kind of checking in, maybe lining out some specific time frames. The 26th, then, James and Elijah Bueller will be here. We kind of determined it's going to be a pretty small crowd that day. I think we've got a number of people. It's like this whole section going to Lancaster, I believe. Okay. But James and Elijah will take care of our assembly that morning. Any other announcements Steve, you may be aware of? Okay.
We're not gonna be here. Me and Chad have to go.
Yeah, you guys got drill. Yep.
Then I leave for Georgia 2 days after we leave from Motors.
For how long?
So June 6th, 15 days.
Couple weeks.
Number 4 for a prayer hymn. Let's do the first and last verse, number 4, and then I will have prayer for us. To Canaan's land I'm on my way, where the soul never dies. My darkest night will turn to day, where the soul never dies. No sad farewells, no tears and eyes, where all is love and the soul never dies. I'm on my way to that fair land where the soul never dies, where there will be no parting and the soul never dies. No sad farewells, no tear-dimmed eyes, where all is love and the soul never dies. Let's pray. God of heaven, we thank you so much for the hope that you give us. Lord, we thank you that we have such great confidence that we can even come before the throne of our Creator. Lord, knowing that you have given us a guide and instruction, Lord, to be pleasing to you. Lord, I just thank you so much for these opportunities to gather together and the strength that we can draw from one another, Lord, and especially as we come around this table and participate, Lord, in a growth within your word and the understanding of your will. Lord, as we can sing praises of glory and honor to you. And Lord, we just thank you for all that we can do as part of the body. I pray for our effectiveness. Lord, I pray that as the body heads out, Lord, into our various communities and our various lives and locations in this new week, I pray that we could be effective and a light. Lord, that we can show people the love of Christ in our lives, that they might consider their current state with you. Lord, I just pray for all the efforts throughout the world of the gospel being spread. Lord, those that make great sacrifices. And Lord, I know that basic needs are there for that work to take place. And I just pray that you might be with those situations, Lord, and give as you see fit. Lord, I pray for the brothers in Yanni and the efforts that they're making. Lord, I just pray for those that are dealing with physical trials, Lord, as these bodies break down in this life, or as we encounter hardship of various sorts, Lord, that you just might provide comfort and strength in those situations. Lord, I just pray that you might be glorified in the things that are done today. Lord, I pray that we can be a witness for you in this week and that we can seize every effort, Lord, to show love and kindness to the people around us. That's things in Jesus' name. Amen. Number 5, let's come around the table. Let's just do the first verse, number 5, and then the guys will come forward. First verse. I will sing the wondrous story of the Christ who died for me, how he left his home in glory for the cross of Calvary. Yes, I'll sing the wondrous story of the Christ who died for me. Sing it with the saints in glory, gathered by the crystal sea.
Morning.
Morning.
Well, any morning is a wonderful morning that the Lord has brought to us, but it's kind of damp and gloomy out. So I think maybe we ought to brighten it up a little bit before we get into talking about mothers. Back when I was very small, and that was a long time ago, in Sunday school, we used to have a song that was Heavenly Sunshine. Does anybody remember that? Okay, well, let's sing that. And you don't want to hear me sing, so you better drown this out. Heavenly sunshine, flooding my soul with glory divine. Heavenly sunshine, hallelujah. Well, here we are to honor our mothers this morning, and we've all had one. I hope we've all had one. Mine's been gone for 51 years, so it's been quite a while since I've had one. So, the most important mother there was Mother Mary. And we don't honor her like some churches do, but she's probably the most important mother there ever was in the world. So we want to remember her this morning. And along with talking about mothers, there was back, Russ and Vince had a thing they called they were brothers from another mother. And that still sticks. That still sticks. In the Bible, we'll take the King James Version, the mothers are mentioned 159 times in the King James Version of the Bible. Now, some of the other new versions are a little different, but we were mentioned quite a few times because mothers are very, very important. The Bible says that mothers provide strength and dignity and the future for everyone. And every household suffers from nothing because your mother will take care of that. Jesus also says about women that they were not second-class citizens. It didn't make any difference what age, sex, marital status you were. Women were very, very important. So I've got a little prayer here this morning I'd like to read to you. It's, Dear Lord, this is a mother speaking to God. Dear Lord, it's such a hectic day with little time to stop and pray. For life's been anything but calm since you all called me to be mom. Running errands, matching socks, building dreams with building blocks, cooking, cleaning, finding shoes, and other stuff that children lose. Fitting lids on bottled bugs. Now I can remember that chasing lightning bugs. And then we'd always have to go to mom to find a lid for that. A stack of last year's mail to read. So where's the quiet time I need? Yet when I steal a minute, Lord, I just sink. It's at the sink or the ironing board. To ask the blessings of your grace, I see them in my small one's face. That you have blessed me all the while as I stop to kiss that precious smile. Let's pray.
Dear Father in heaven, we come around your table today to look upon ourselves and examine ourselves. That we always want to give you thanks first and foremost on this day, especially that we give thanks to the moms that are with you today, the ones that are still currently here, and the moms yet to become. We pray that you give them all strength to continue to nurture and grow their children in godly homes, and always strive to learn more about you and always to put your will first. We just pray that you'll give them all strength today, that we may give them a joyous day, the blessing that they deserve. We just pray that you'll watch over us all as we go to celebrate this day and each and every day that we have here on this earth. Pray all these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she smiles at the future. She opens her mouth in wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Charm is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord, she will be praised. And the theme of, which, I keep asking people if they like this, because I don't know if any of you do, but I like my approach right now on sermons, drawing just some basic lessons. Thank you very much. Basic lessons from passages of Scripture, things that hopefully we can apply and consider. So I want to do that same thing with mothers this morning. And while, I got to look at my sermon, it's not really an ode to mothers as it is if you're a mother, you should do this. So maybe it's a little more instructional for Mother's Day, but the lessons, with the great role that God has put mothers in as far as just a pillar of families, the church, relationships in general, the continuance of human civilization. I mean, so much rides on them that these lessons, I would hope today, while they seem maybe geared towards mothers, have a mother as an example, all of us can definitely draw from these particular lessons that we see in Scripture. So the first one that I wanted to mention today is to devote your children to God. Whether that be children, grandchildren, you're a mother, you're a father, but devote your children to God. Go to 1 Samuel chapter 1. I'm going to read this entire chapter here. 1 Samuel chapter 1. 1 Samuel chapter 1. Starting in verse 1, now there was a certain man from Ramoth Zophim, from the hill country of Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, an Ephraimite. He had 2 wives. The name of one was Hannah, the name of the other Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Now this man would go up from his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts in Shiloh, and the 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were priests to the Lord there. When the day came that Elkanah sacrificed, he would give portions to Peninnah his wife and to all her sons and her daughters. But to Hannah he would give a double portion, for he loved Hannah, but the Lord had closed her womb. Her rival, however, would provoke her bitterly to irritate her, because the Lord had closed her womb. It happened year after year, as often as she went up to the house of the Lord, she would provoke her. So she wept and would not eat. Then Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you weep, and why do you not eat? And why is your heart sad? Am I not better to you than 10 sons? Then Hannah rose after eating and drinking at Shiloh. Now Eli, the priest, was sitting on the seat by the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. She, greatly distressed, prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. She made a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if you will indeed look on the affliction of your maidservant and remember me, and not forget your maidservant, but will give your maidservant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and a razor shall never come to his head. Now it came about, as she continued praying before the Lord, that Eli was watching her mouth. As for Hannah, she was speaking in her heart, only her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. So Eli thought she was drunk. Then Eli said to her, how long will you make yourself drunk? Put away your wine from you. But Hannah replied, No, my Lord, I am a woman oppressed in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have poured out my soul before the Lord. Do not consider your maidservant as a worthless woman, for I have spoken until now out of my great concern and provocation. Then Eli answered and said, Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant your petition that you have asked of him. She said, Let your maidservant find favor in your sight. So the woman went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad. Then they arose early in the morning and worshipped before the Lord, and returned again to their house in Ramah. And Elkanah had relations with Hannah his wife, and the Lord remembered her. It came about in due time after Hannah had conceived that she gave birth to a son, and she named him Samuel, saying, Because I have asked him of the Lord. Then the man Elkanah went up with all his household to offer the Lord the yearly sacrifice and pay his vow. But Hannah did not go up, for she said to her husband, I will not go up until the child is weaned. Then I will bring him, that he may appear before the Lord and stay there forever. Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Do what seems best to you. Remain until you have weaned him. Only may the Lord confirm his word. So the woman remained and nursed her son until she weaned him. Now when she had weaned him, she took him up with her with the 3-year-old bull and 1 ephah of flour and a jug of wine, and brought him to the house of the Lord in Shiloh, although the child was young. Then they slaughtered the bull and brought the boy to Eli. She said, "O my Lord, as your soul lives, my Lord, I am the woman who stood here beside you, praying to the Lord. For this boy I prayed, and the Lord has given me my petition, which I asked of him. So I have also dedicated him to the Lord. As long as he lives, he is dedicated to the Lord." And he worshiped the Lord there. Hannah's dedication and vow to God involved something a little different than what it would be in today's era. Keep in mind that the entire location of godly service and worship was the tabernacle. That's where worship happened. That's where service happened. And that was the most logical choice for Hannah to decide, I guess, in dedicating her son Samuel back to God, was to take him to the place of worship so that he could then also serve within that realm. For mothers today, it's very different. That responsibility falls to you. We understand that we worship in spirit and in truth. We understand that we offer our bodies as a living sacrifice. So if you are going to dedicate your children or your grandchildren or those in your care to God, that involves your involvement with raising up that child and having an impact on that child that instills a desire to worship and to serve. That's what that means if you're going to dedicate that child. Now, we live in a society that is more than willing to take on your parental responsibility. That's a huge fault of our current culture. And while playing the devil's advocate here, I feel like maybe that the freedoms involved in our country that has actually come about out of a positive mindset. Our country takes the approach that we want no one to suffer, we want no one to be sick, we want no one to die. Anything that we can do to avoid that, we do it. And there are problems that come along with that. But that's where I think the idea came from, is we don't want any children to grow up unparented. But that's never been the role of government. That's the role of the church. Okay, that's the role of those who love and serve God. But nevertheless, because that infrastructure is there, society will take on your parental role. They're set up to do so. I've mentioned many times in sermons before and in lessons that it is a shame for me to see how many people have grown up in the church and just disappear. I've watched multiple generations of do that at this particular point, and it's frustrating. And what is 10 times more frustrating is when I see some of the parents sit back and think, what in the world happened? What happened? And the thing that I can encourage you with is that dedication is exactly that. If you're going to dedicate your children to the Lord or your grandchildren or those in your care, it involves you instilling in that child a desire to worship and to serve. Many times, if that is not the case, if instead the child has seen your parental decision as taking that child to godly things or having them be a part of godly things, it's a natural process that when a child becomes an adult, for them to go contrary to their parents' way. That's part of becoming an adult, is suddenly choice is their option. So as they start to make those choices, if a desire to worship and to serve has not been instilled, and instead it has been something that is required or something that is obligated or something that is law, it's the natural process for the child to consider, well, I'm ready to do things in my own life. Perhaps I'll do things differently. I've also seen situations where people grow up in the church in an environment like this, where I feel that we scripturally and in all godliness are not bound or enslaved by anything that is wrong. We're not bound by an unscriptural leadership. We're not bound by philosophies and things that fly in the face of Scripture like we might have been at former congregations or at New Heights or wherever the case may be. We don't deal with that stuff at all. We don't deal with those things. So it's very sad for me when I have seen a child raised up in this atmosphere take the approach of, hey, I just got married, let's go find our own church. And they go to a congregation that has all those things and has that slavery and has those distractions that Satan just sprinkles into God's church. Dedication of that child involves you every moment of every day modeling that idea, teaching that idea, having a witness in that idea, and enslaving in every way that you can. You know, Proverbs 22:6, I think there's a lot of parents that have battled with this passage, trying to determine if it doesn't mean what it says, but it does. Train up a child in the way that they should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it. And I think the reason a lot of parents battle with that is because when the end result comes about, it kind of points a finger, I guess. It kind of, it can be shameful in a way. It's a lot easier to say, well, that passage doesn't necessarily mean that, as opposed to say, hey, did I falter here? Was there something different I could have done? Was there a lesson I could have learned? Was there something I can do now to have an impact on my children? Devote your children to God by encouraging that life of worship and service to the Master. Don't make this about law. Don't make it about requirement. Make it about love and sacrifice. Second lesson is teach your children how to live. Do not live through your children. Teach your children how to live. Don't live through your children. Go to Matthew chapter 14. I had to throw a bad mother in here today as well. And this one's a pretty good example of a pretty bad mother, I would say. Matthew chapter 14, starting in verse 1. At that time, Herod the Tetrarch heard the news of Jesus, said to his servants, "This is John the Baptist. He is risen from the dead, and that is why miraculous powers are at work in him. For when Herod had John arrested, he bound him and put him in prison because of Herodias, the wife of his brother Philip. For John had been saying to him, 'It's not lawful for you to have her.' Although Herod wanted to put him to death, he feared the crowd because they regarded John as prophet. But when Herod's birthday came, the daughter of Herodias danced before them and pleased Herod so much that he promised with an oath to give her whatever she asked. Having been prompted by her mother, she said, 'Give me here on a platter the head of John the Baptist.' Although he was grieved, the king commanded it to be given because of his oaths and because of his dinner guests. He sent and had John beheaded in the prison, and his head was brought on a platter and given to the girl, and she brought it to her mother. His disciples came and took away the body and buried it, and they went away and reported to Jesus." Wouldn't call Herodias that good of a mother by any means. To act selfishly is bad enough. If I do things for my own personal benefit, potentially to your detriment, that's condemned heavily in Scripture. But for me to actually use another human being for my personal benefit, I think takes it to a whole new level. And that's exactly what Herodias does here with her daughter. She fulfills her own desires, what her choices would be through her daughter in accomplishing this great evil. But while this is a pretty brutal example of that, I think that this is a practice that you can see pretty commonly today. There's always a temptation to live vicariously through your children. The challenging thing about this parenting thing is there's no practice realm. There's no training ground really, other than what we see in Scripture, and other than reaching out to the support system. Hello, another benefit of being part of the body of Christ. Reaching out to those that you trust and have been good parents and so forth, analyzing those things. And I would encourage all young parents to do that. I quite often, any chance I get, I talk to James and Larissa Bueller, because they're running about 10 years ahead of us for the most part. So whenever I get the chance, I'm like, how did you guys mess up? What did you figure out? How did you do that? What did you do in that particular case? But parenting doesn't come with that training ground. Mistakes can be made in parenting. That I think what then happens at times is, parents, as their children get older, they kind of start to remake their choices through their children. They don't teach their children how to live. Instead, they start to make their adjustments through their children, and they feel that that is justified or somehow fixes maybe past mistakes or decisions that they might have made. So an example that might be, maybe when the child was young, the mother or the father, typically I think the mother maybe made some bad choices as far as the marital relationship or choosing of that mate, of that father. So as that child gets older, they begin to make the choices for the child, thinking that they can almost re-choose or do over some of the mistakes that they made. And I think that's something you got to be very careful of, because you need to treat the child or train the child how to live. You can't make all the choices for them. You have to teach them how to choose. In the business world, there's so much talk right now and discussion about the fact that no one knows how to think through anything whatsoever. I can take you down the street here to a gas station where there's a person working that has 2 master's degrees. The master's degrees doesn't mean squat, okay? I can't take you there anymore. He's passed away, but I had a tenant that had at least 1 master's degree. And, he was perfectly happy to live off the system and student loans and so forth. That level of education doesn't necessarily mean, that is an influx of information. It's not necessarily being trained to have the ability to think and to do things. Having Jack's Donuts, it's interesting to me to see the difference in, I can't believe I want to refer to my employees as kids, but I do. It's interesting to see. I would have been so mad if you guys would have called me a kid at 19 years old. But to observe these young people, and you can see the differences in the way that they're, and don't get me wrong, some of them were raised in very bad households, but through those experiences, they learned things, and they learned how to think, and they learned how to work. Whereas others might have been raised in better, loving households. However, they were never encouraged to do that. They weren't trained to think. They weren't trained to work. They weren't taught those things. You want to teach your children how to think, how to make those choices, because one of those reasons, circling back, that I think so many children rebel against religion is, again, when they get to that point where they are liberated from their parents' home. If religion and service and worship has been your choice and not something that they have been taught and trained and encouraged to do, the most natural choices that young adult makes right when it becomes their option to do so is to make choices contrary to what their parents made. That's what I think happens an awful lot. Okay? Kid grows up in the church. It was their parents' decision to be at assembly whenever they were at assembly or to go wherever they went. The second that child gets to a point where they are accountable and capable to themselves of their choices, the most natural choices are, well, mom and dad did this, I might try this. Mom and dad, we always did this, so I'll try this. If you're making those choices for them, that will potentially become that decision. That's why you need to teach them, train them to love and to desire to please the master, as opposed to, hey, we're going, you're coming. I think there's a balance there. There's a difference there. Teach your children how to live, how to choose, so that they will not depart from it. Train up a child in the way that they should go. Train up a child in the way that they should go. Don't demand or pick the way that they should go. Train up the child in the way that they should go. We're training these children. We're training anyone you're having an impact on. You want to encourage them to pursue what is right. You can't do it for them. You can't do it for them. And that's why, as we have Bible studies impact on people, as we try to have conversations, whatsoever. And people will there are some people that you'll encounter that will gladly accept that. They want to be beaten on the head and dragged to the baptistry because that didn't involve their choice, their accountability. Whenever people have grown up in an environment where all the choices are made for them, there are times where those individuals don't rebel. Instead, they live an existence where they want all their choices to be made for them. And we need to be conscious of that, careful of that. I always appreciated, I felt like mom always did a really good job with that, just from a parenting standpoint. I remember going the first time to IU East, to get signed up for classes and to do that stuff. And she was there. And then I don't remember the transition, but I remember shortly after that, every semester I was going to sign myself up and check on stuff and do things. And she was always very good at, kind of being there at the onset. But you want to train these kids and train one another, all those that you're impacting. You want to create a way that gives them the ability to grow themselves. You can't make them grow. You can't make them learn, but you can help guide them and encourage them. Final lesson today is to model sincere selflessness, and your example will be followed. Model sincere selflessness, and your example will be followed. Go to Ruth chapter 1. I don't think this gal gets enough credit sometimes. And I'm not talking about Ruth. Ruth chapter 1, starting in verse 1. Now it came about in the days when the judges governed that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the land of Moab with his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. Ephrathites of Bethlehem in Judah. Now they entered the land of Moab and remained there. Then Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They took for themselves Moabite women as wives. The name of one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. And they lived there about 10 years. Then both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and the women were bereft of their 2 children and her husband. The woman was bereft, of her 2 children and her husband. Then she arose with her daughter-in-laws, and that she might return from the land of Moab, for she had heard that the land of Moab, that the Lord had visited his people in giving them food. So she departed from that place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, "Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. May the Lord grant that you may find rest each in his house, in the house of her husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. They said to her, "No, but we will surely return with you to your people." But Naomi said, "Return, my daughters. Why should you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Return, my daughters. Go, for I too am old and am too old to have a husband. If I said I have hope, if I should even have a husband tonight and also bear sons, would you therefore wait until they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is harder for me than for you, for the hand of the Lord has gone forth against me." And they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Then she said, "Behold, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and where there I will be buried. Thus may the Lord do to me, and worse, if anything but death parts you and me." When she saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. I like Naomi. I don't think Naomi gets as much credit as she could get. You think through this particular situation, just like we talked about in the first hour this morning, of such a different world. No communication, no cell phones, no Facebook, no mail writing system, really, of any sort. Okay? Naomi is in this foreign land, and she tells these daughters of hers, who have been her daughters potentially for many, many, many years, for your benefit, go back to your parents' house while I leave. She's willing to disregard and leave, allow her support system, I should say, to leave, and really continue the rest of her life in kind of a state of sadness. And she's willing to do that for the benefit of her daughters-in-law, Ruth and Orpah. To me, when you start to consider the selfless act that this is, the fact, knowing that she won't get nice letters from them. She won't get pictures from them. of their families and their happiness. She won't be able to message them from time to time on Facebook or get a text or anything, that they will be gone. And yet she's willing to give that up and have a permanent farewell. Love is selflessness. In Philippians chapter 2, Philippians chapter 2, verse 3, one of my favorite verses that I think describes love without actually using the word love. It says, do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility of mind, regard one another as more important than yourselves. That's exactly what Naomi did here. She wasn't thinking of herself and of her future, what she wanted or what she even needed. She was thinking of her daughters and what they wanted, what they needed. Romans chapter 12. Verse 9 and 10. Let love be without hypocrisy. Abhor what is evil, cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Give preference to one another in honor. Really neat picture there of Naomi. Model sincere selflessness, and your example will be followed. You know, as mothers, I don't know. I know it's Mother's Day. I know we have a great responsibility, and I definitely want to honor our mothers. But guys, I mean, all of these lessons really drive to the heart of our Christian walk here. We have a great responsibility to model and to encourage, to show people how God would have us live, and to encourage people to live as God would have them live. That's what we get to do. And mothers do that every single day. Every single moment is a constant effort to try to train up young people and train up their children so that whenever they get to that point, they start to make those decisions, they'll choose the right way. And, you know, I was even thinking about that last night, because sometimes it's more challenging than others, and you want to just wipe them out. I understand how God feels sometimes. But you know, you look at those situations, and then they do something that makes you very proud. That it's like stuff gets through, and you know, you just constantly do that labor of love, and it works that way as we do that work with other people, as we work with people that we try to have an impact on, as we try to show them those things. Sometimes they'll do something that it's like, wow, am I having any impact at all? But then an opportunity comes along, or then something changes, or then something drastic happens in their life that makes them fall back on the love and the compassion that you have shown them. It makes them think of that thing, you know, appreciate it more, the blessings that you have shown them. Obviously, today is set aside to celebrate our mothers, a day of reflection for our mothers, a day to renew a purpose of motherhood and the impact that you can have, parenthood and godliness in general. Happy Mother's Day to all our mothers. Appreciate you all. All right, number 7 will be our closing. Number 7. Any announcements we need to be made aware of? We're going to have a little bit of work done to the outside of the building. We're going to paint the shed and a couple items. If any guys or anyone has any questions about that, Dave. Good deal. All right. Yeah, if anyone has any questions about that. But this guy, Dave got a quote for us, which I appreciate. And this guy is, I've used him many, many times before. I think Dave's used him. And yeah, great. Yeah, that's good.
Can he fix water heaters?
He can. I think I'm going to order the Element out of that. I'll try that first. I hate to spend more money, but spending more money might save money. I think it was just wired bad and might have burnt up that Element. That's what happened.
It's a shame they're not accountable.
Yeah. So, other announcements seem to be made aware of. Any birthdays, anniversaries? This is May. Not yet, but next week we'll sing to Grandma. Or 2 weeks. 27th. I've remembered very few birthdays in my life, but yours and Mom's were always two of them. So I mean, yours and Mom's, and took a while to remember Dad's. Rachel's. I wouldn't remember my kids if I didn't have a system to do that.
Support system.
No,
Oh.
I don't want to say. I remember my kids pretty good. But. Anything else? Good to see everybody. All right, let's go ahead and stand. And let's sing the first verse of number 7. And then we'll be dismissed. Come we that love the Lord, and let our joys be known. Join in a song with sweet accord. Join in a song with sweet accord. And thus surround the throne, and thus surround the throne. We're marching to Zion, beautiful, beautiful Zion. We're marching upward to Zion, the beautiful city of God.
I do have something I want to show you.
Egg money?
Egg money, I'm gonna go get a. Thank you. When I was on vacation, it shows, I went to the
Oh, love you.
I got a picture of the I got to see those. They're reproductions. I don't know what because I was put back in the 60s. But I got to see that, and then where she married the Indian American. Their communities were set up something like this. And it was really pretty cool. You know, the ships, those are the ships. And I got to hear on that. We didn't go out in the water, but they did go out in the water. They tried to take it to make it just to keep them. So I got to see that kind of stuff. When I get my pictures done, I'll show you. It was really, really neat.
You need to get in the place.
I moved those so they don't get stepped on.
Are you supposed to be running?
Walk fast.
That would be, are you supposed to be running?
Play without running.
You don't need to force Haley to give it back. You cute.
So.
Baby cute.
I got her.
I love it. And I like it.
When she gets to this, she'll have this for a good reference. So I was telling her, yeah, where it's from. And really, I share all the way through. And then on this side is the first lady. So the one I got, I was president and vice president. Yep. But I thought she was like the one who was president, leading ladies. So I got her that. And then a map of what it used to be, and it was, when the first settlements, Jamestown, which is right in this area here. But I heard her say, they didn't have all those things. And this is Virginia, and they went, oh, Lake was there.